I'm here with 3 real horror stories that will haunt your dreams, and you won't believe the last one. And now, for our first story. I was lying in bed trying to sleep when suddenly I heard a bang in the middle of the night. It sounded like someone had thrown a large rock through my bedroom window. I live alone. My husband is away on business trips all the time, and my children are grown up and out of the house. So who could it be? I got up and went over to the window and looked outside. The blinds were shut, but I could still see a dark shadow standing just outside. I pulled back the blinds fully and turned on the light. There was nothing there. Maybe it was just a branch that had scraped against the glass. I shrugged it off and went back to bed. But then, about 15 minutes later, I heard another bang. This time, it definitely sounded like someone was jumping on my roof. I got out of bed again, and this time I called out, "Who's there?" No reply. I waited, straining to hear anything. Then I heard what sounded like hail, footsteps running around on my roof. I ran over to the window and peered out. The storm had started to get heavy, and I couldn't see a thing in the driving rain. I called out again, "Who's out there?" Then I saw it. Another dark shape on my roof, moving quickly away from me. I stood there watching until it disappeared. Then I went back to bed and tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I kept hearing bangs and footsteps. Sometimes I would hear whispering voices too. I got up and went downstairs to see if the front door was locked, which it was. I went back upstairs and into my bedroom. In the morning, after, of course, not sleeping a wink, I got up and went to the window. There was nothing there. But as I opened the blinds, I saw something. On the other side of the window, scrunched up in the corner, was a small piece of paper. I got down a ladder and went to retrieve it. It was only a child's drawing, but there was something written on it. "We know you're in there. Come out. Come out wherever you are." It was obviously a kid's handwriting. Had some kids been messing about on my roof in the night? Why would they do that? I decided to go into town and get some supplies, but I never did find out what had happened. After that night, though, sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night, I can still hear those footsteps on my roof, and I never open those blinds again. And now for our next story. It was around 4 a.m., and I was fast asleep in bed when I suddenly heard a knock. At first I thought it must have been my neighbor, Mr. Clayton. He sometimes likes to pop over in the middle of the night for a cup of tea, but I knew that wasn't him because my cats would have been meowing and making a fuss. Yet when I went to the window and peered out, I could see a man standing under my window. I went downstairs and asked him what he wanted. He told me he was lost and asked if he could use my phone to call a taxi. I told him I didn't have any phone numbers, and he looked confused and disappointed. I went back to bed, but every time I closed my eyes, I could see his face. I knew I should have called the police, but I didn't. I hoped whoever he was, he would soon leave. In the morning, however, he was still there. And by now I was getting worried. I went downstairs and offered him some breakfast and coffee, but he seemed reluctant to eat. "I don't want to impose," he said. I told him he shouldn't worry about that. And while we ate, I made plans with him to leave. I drove him to the local train station so he could continue his journey. As I watched him walk away, I noticed that he was limping. I also noticed that he had no shoes and that one of his socks was hanging off his foot. I felt sorry for him, so I invited him to stay at my spare bedroom for a few days until he could sort himself out. When his wife picked him up a couple of days later, I asked him why he was walking around barefoot and without socks. He just shook his head sadly. "That's a long story," he said. Later that day, I found a pair of shoes in my garden. They were old and worn, but they were the exact same style and color as the shoes he should have been wearing. To this day, I don't know who he was or where he came from. All of my friends think I was an idiot for letting him stay in my house, but I really don't think he was dangerous. I just think he was very, very lost. And now for our final story. This happened many years ago when I was 12 years old and living in a village in Yorkshire. One night I had a recurring dream. I was in a field and there was a large hill beside me. I always woke up in my bed which was right next to the window. But in my dream, I would look out of the bedroom window and see the same hill right behind our house. I never paid much attention to it, seeing as dreams aren't real. The next day, I was playing with my friends in a field close to our house. We were running around and kicking a ball when I realized that there was a large hill right behind us. I stopped to stare at it for a moment, wondering why I recognized it. Then we continued playing until my mother called us in for tea. That evening, after I'd finished my tea, I went up to my bedroom window and stared out at the fields. The same hill I had seen in my dream, and the field was right behind my house. I knew I hadn't dreamed it. So why did I recognize the hill from my dream? Was I dreaming when I was awake? I wondered if anyone else could see the hill. I asked my mother, but she told me I was just imagining things. I went to the window and shouted, "You see that hill behind the house, Mum? Isn't it strange?" She just smiled and carried on reading her newspaper. Maybe she was just being kind and didn't want to upset me. I asked my friend's mother the next day and she told me the same thing. So I started to think that maybe I had just imagined it all. However, I was talking to my friend a few weeks later and I mentioned the hill again. He stopped playing and stared at me. "You mean the one behind your house?" he said. "Yeah," I replied. "How do you know about that hill?" he asked me. "Because it's behind my house," I said. And that's when I knew I hadn't imagined it. The hill was really there. But how could we not have seen it before? Was it some kind of hiding place? Was it a shortcut somewhere? Was it a burial ground? I searched the internet and found old maps of the area, but they didn't show the hill either. My friend suggested that we should dig it up and find out what was going on. So we did. We dug a big hole, but all we found was a bit of wood and some bricks. Still, I knew the hill was there. I just couldn't see it. Was I losing my mind? Did I imagine the whole thing? Or was the hill some kind of secret hiding place that everyone in the village knew about except me? I gave up searching for it after that. But sometimes when I'm home visiting my parents, I go to my bedroom window and stare out at the fields behind our house, hoping that somehow I'll see it. But so far I haven't. More scary stories on my channel. And remember to subscribe for more terrifying tales each and every week.